All right, we are
And
live. All right, how's everybody today?
it
I've
is
been thrown
live.
Good.
out of the house.
John, you've been thrown out. This is terrible.
Yeah, it's probably only for about 4 or 5 months.
Huh.
Is your wife finally done with you? Have
Oh
you
no,
find?
she's been thrown out with me.
Uh-oh, what's happening? Are you guys evicted?
Bed bugs.
Some idiots who were working on the roof broke a pipe and destroyed a column of 4 apartments, all destroyed. So they have to do a lot of demo work in our apartment and then rebuild
Jeez.
it. But we wanted
Yeah.
new floors anyway, and this is what we would have had to have done, but we would have never done it because we would have had to move all our furniture out and live somewhere for a few months, and it would have been a friggin' fortune. So we were never going to replace the floors. Now it's free,
All right, sorry, I
and
didn't
and
I
and they're
didn't hear
putting
any of that.
and they're putting us up in a better place than we would have ever rented. They made a mistake, but we're okay with that. We're in a single
And
home with a cute little koi pond in the front. It's really
that's
pretty charming.
that's lovely. I actually didn't hear most of that, John, because I was having a problem with my AirPods, but here I am now. So
This is a good
let's do
story.
the
Yeah.
yeah. So
Disclaimer. Go for it.
let disclaimer. Thank you very much. So well, let me first just announce everybody. So here we are again today with another episode, and we have Mr. Zach Pasha, who is a wonderful OCD therapist out there in the Midwest, right, Zach? He's also
I'm
the
actually in Iowa
co-chair.
today, not in Minnesota. So,
Oh, in Iowa and not Minnesota. Are those
yeah.
different places, Zach? Are those distinct places? Sorry.
You'll just look on a map.
One is colder.
Okay.
That's the way they're differentiated. One is colder than the other,
You're
One
not
is
wrong.
colder.
and one
Now
has
I
more
know.
pigs than people.
Which one has more pigs than
I would
people?
replace pigs
Iowa.
with corn. No,
Yeah, you
corn.
have corn, and yeah, but it has corn, but it's mainly feed corn. So there are more pigs than people in Iowa, and you never want to drive behind a pig truck. Holy
You're
cow!
not
That is.
wrong.
I lived in Iowa for 4 years. I know I'm not wrong.
Yep. It's not as
Anyway,
bad as it
All right,
used to
let's
be, I
not talk
think.
about that anymore. I was
Okay.
just trying to do the introductions. Let's see if we can get through the introductions. Zach, also the co-chair of the National Social Anxiety Center. And then
Thank
we
you.
also have Dr. Jon Grayson, who is a wonderful OCD therapist, has the Grayson Centers for, is it anxiety and OCD? Am I getting that right, John?
you're close.
I'm close. It's close enough. Out in Pasadena, California, but also noted author and worldwide known guru for OCD treatment. And I'm Dr. Katy Manetta with my practice in Belmont Shore, and also trying to wrangle these two for our YouTube series. And so that's become
Yay.
my other part-time job. We have, oh, and just one more quick disclaimer. So this is not a substitute for therapy. If you're really in need of therapy, please contact a therapist, please. And if you're in some sort of a mental health crisis, please contact your local emergency room or dial 911. We also have in the United States 988, the warm line. My gosh, am I getting that right? 988, yes.
Hmm.
And so just wanted to give people a few resources before we get started. So we have a lot of interesting questions about OCD today to talk over. In addition to the questions that are now coming up on our
Ooh.
chat. And so, and Lewis is reminding us, everybody, that this is OCD Awareness Week. And so
Yes.
I'm really happy that we were able to squeeze in an episode today because I think it's a good time for us to remind everybody how incredibly treatable OCD is. And I think that this is probably, if I had to guess, why it is that the three of us love treating OCD so much. It's because there's just this incredible opportunity for change with OCD. You know, I think there are a lot of other disorders that mire people for a long time that are really, you know, that are I think that have maybe a lower chance of success. But for OCD treatment, I mean, we have an incredible track record of success with ERP for OCD treatment.
Yeah. I think the main thing that leads
So,
to
which
people.
question do you guys want to get to first?
You caught that, Zach, right?
I
You
did.
catch
I
it.
did.
Okay.
Just
All
keeping
right.
you in line.
All right.
Katie, I
Yeah.
do. Will you say that? Because I think it actually might have been a good point. No? Okay.
Katie's still online.
I'm
I'm
not
having
sure.
a terrible problem with my audio today, guys.
That's
I can
okay.
tell. So while you're having
Yeah.
bad audio problems, I was going to say, I think with OCD, the main cause of people not getting better is poorly done therapy. Which I think is a motivation for us doing this in an effort to try to help therapists as well as help direct sufferers in the right direction.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What is it? 14 to 17 years? The
Before somebody
average
finds
person
treatment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again.
The average person takes 14 to 17 years to find decent treatment.
Yeah.
Brutal.
And, again, a treatment that's been around since 1985, really earlier, but I'm letting people have time to read the research that both the APAs think is the, ERP is the first line treatment, and the OC Foundation considers it the first line treatment. And our most important discovery is that it's easier to treat somebody with OCD than it is to change the behavior of mental health professionals.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh, but
well, no, it is funny. And then it's just horrible because it's like,
exactly.
there's a lot of suffering as a result of that.
So, Jon, there was one question that you said was easy.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to jump into that one first?
Do you want to set it up by saying what the question is?
Nope,
Sure.
you have to remember.
I do kind of remember, but
Okay.
but I thought but Katie is so eloquent. I thought I'd let her set it up.
I'm really
Good
not
idea.
eloquent today because my audio is off, and so while
But
you're
your hair looks
responding,
fabulous.
But your hair is
I know.
good, and this is verbal, so you
Thank
don't have
God.
to hear
Yeah.
what you're saying.
okay, all right. So, all right, I'm going to read the question, and then, like I said, I'm going to fiddle with my AirPods and see if I can get them working. So, all right. So I had a dialogue back and forth with a super bright person online named Raphael, who has commented in the past. And Raphael was talking about one of our previous episodes where we were talking to Valentina. And I can't remember exactly what his initial question was, but my response was that I had never had a client tell me that they 100% believed that their compulsions were going to work, that their rituals were going to work to prevent the feared outcome. And that also, even in the throes of like panic over OCD, like in the moment when people were so tempted to use their compulsions or their rituals, I've never had somebody tell me that they were 100% sure that their rituals were going to work, right? That they were really going to work. And so Raphael's question, I thought was a very astute question, was if that's the case, then why are we spending so much time trying to tell Valentina about all the sort of cracks that she has in her theory, right? We're sitting there and saying, well, you might be afraid of mercury, but are you worried about all the pollution? Are you worried when you're driving to work, et cetera, et cetera? And I thought it was such a good question.
So the answer is easy, because he's almost saying, well, people kind of know that things are uncertain. Why are we spending so much time trying to talk to them? And I am spending some time trying to convince them that things are uncertain, but I'm really spending more time talking about that helping the individual change their goal. So he's kind of missing the point. He's focusing on that. I'm trying to point out all the ways her certainty or rules are inaccurate. But the real thing is we're trying to convince her to risk living with uncertainty. So despite the fact she knows things are uncertain, for her to choose to live with uncertainty is really scary. And so the question we always have to ask everybody when we're doing treatment is like, why would you take this risk? Because it feels like it could have terrible outcomes. And so a person needs a lot of reasons to know why they would take that risk, and so the reasons we're kind of using are like, well, the summary of reasons would be, what are you losing to OCD? How are you messing up everyone around you? And in what ways your rituals actually fail? That, like, no matter what you're doing, they're not good enough, and that they have such a low probability of working, your probability is like screwing your life up more. So it's helping the person come to that conclusion, because people are gamblers. If you take, go to Vegas, if you ask anybody, are you going to win at the slots? Well, pretty much everybody knows they're going to lose money. Right? Nobody's going, it's like, really, I said like, hey, you're going to play the slots for 5 hours, but I'd like you to make a bet right now. Are you going to get rich playing the slots or not? Nobody's going to bet they're going to get rich playing the slots. And yet they go and do it because they have this fantasy. Like, they know they're probably going to lose, but they might win. And it would be so cool if they won.
It'd be sweet.
And it's just such a great fantasy that when they press that button or pull the lever and they lose, they're like shocked. So they do it again. And the same way somebody with OCD, they know, if you catch them outside of a ritual period, are your rituals going to work? Yeah, probably not. You're going to get stuck. Yeah, it's going to make me more miserable. But in the throes of really bad anxiety and desperation, it's like, but if I get this right, I'll be free. And so they play the OCD slot machine. So to get somebody to not do that and to help them risk it, and to just say, well, you're probably going to lose, isn't enough. It has to be personal. If treatment were just so simple as like, hey, here are the odds, stop doing it, that would be great. No one would have OCD. But good treatment is really personal. I may have written a book, but I don't do treatment out of a book. If somebody sees me, it's not like, we're on page 55 today. My treatment with them
You
is
don't
not
do that,
following
Jon?
Well, shit. I've been saying that for a while.
I'm
So-
always talking about page 55.
Well, 55 is one of my favorites, but because right, it works better if I'm talking to a person and addressing them. The person has to know this is their treatment, because how do I know this really applies to me? So really what we're doing as therapists is coming up with giving them reasons that makes them feel like, okay, I believe you get me. Because if I don't think you get me, why the heck am I going to listen to you? It's like, I believe you get me and like you're making sense. I tell all my clients in the first session that I don't want you to do anything that I tell you to do unless I've convinced you. I'd rather have you argue with me rather than be a good little soldier. That's what I want from them, because you know what? It's not working if they're not convinced. So I think that's the answer to Raphael.
Well, I have a slightly different answer, but it's in the same vein. My answer was more along the lines of that, I feel like when people are there in the throes of their OCD panic and they're doing compulsions, it's not because they're so convinced the compulsions will work or because they're convinced that the feared outcome is going to occur. I think it's like that gambling thing that you first brought up, right? There's this chance, this small chance. And Jon, you've talked about this before, the painful choice of OCD, right? And the importance of therapists understanding, if you ask somebody, well, there's a really tiny chance that your child will die unless you do this. That's a really hard decision to make, even if it's just this shred, right?
Right.
And so it's not that, I was also, this is going to come up again as we talk about the I-CBT question that we got. You know, early in my training, John's book was so instrumental in my early training and still is. I use your book all the time. And you had talked about, right, this gun test, right? And what the gun test is, right, is that, and I'm going to repeat it again for those of you who don't know, right? Gun to your head and gun to the head of everybody that you love. And if you get it wrong, you die. Is your feared consequence going to occur? Right? What do you think? Yes or no? You have to answer or else everybody dies. And so, and it forces people to make their best educated guess. And I think that what ends up happening when people are in the throes of their OCD is not that their educated guess is inaccurate. It's that there's this chance, this tiny
Sure.
little possibility, but that is so scary that they'd rather just do the compulsion and be able to try to move on if
And
they
so
can.
and so we point out why the ritual fails. That is,
Right.
like, you come up with a ritual, I'll tell you why it's not good enough.
Right.
And I'll explain that in the ways in which actually the risk may not be, maybe negligibly changed, if at all. And there's a risk of a whole bunch of other things that are more likely that you're not protecting against. So
Right.
why am I changing this one and not changing this one that's more likely? So yeah, it's, and if you want, if you're really trying to wind me up, which I feel she's doing that, that's a good lead into the ICBT question.
Is it a
It
carrot
is.
or meat? I can't tell which one.
Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, let's talk about let me just sort of pose the question. And I promise, Lewis, we're going to get to your question because you always have such good questions and comments. But I want to address this issue. Somebody had found, apparently, can you guys still hear me, or am I?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, thank
I
goodness.
wasn't
Okay.
frowning. I was frowning about if I could see a chat, but I don't see it, so we're good.
Oh no, I'm
Don't worry about
on
it.
the chat. Yeah. Okay.
You're good.
So
She's controlling.
So apparently one of our, no, you guys do have access to the chat right now. You just choose not to. I've given you both access just to let you know. Okay, we're not going to discuss that. We'll fight off air. So in one of our previous episodes, apparently Jon said something that was a little disparaging about ICBT. Not even necessarily disparaging, but maybe sort of poo-pooing ICBT as like the newest and greatest thing out there. And I just want to sort of full disclosure this, and I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I feel like it's important when something is gaining this much attention in the treatment community for us to know exactly what we're talking about. And so I am like this far into studying ICBT to sort of figure out what it's all about so I can come back and have a more intelligent conversation about this. However, I've learned a little at this point. And so let's,
And I
Jon.
probably, because at least at the last time I was actually, I didn't actually mention ICBT by name.
You did at some point. You were quoted. Somebody quoted you. You got to be careful what you say, Jon.
Well,
We're on
I
air.
probably said it elsewhere, but
Yeah.
But what I said, what I'm saying is, one of the core tenets of ICBT is that they can help people to trust their feelings so that they don't have to deal with uncertainty.
Senses, I think, is the word. Senses.
Yeah, senses. Yeah. And
maybe semantics, but either way, it's still important.
Yeah, and I have a slightly, I may have a slightly different definition of uncertainty, but I find for both OC treatment and a general philosophical lifestyle, multiple reasons why the idea of trusting one's senses is a probability statement. And that is to say, there are things that I can say are highly likely to be true. And if ICBT was saying, there are things we think are incredibly likely, and we want to teach people to be comfortable living in the face of low probability events, and that would be fine. I might have some disagreements with how they go about that, but they're like, no, we can help you learn to know. So I have a few I could go on a lot, but I have a few arguments about the nature of that. So in terms of senses, if we take a nice concrete event like witnesses watching some event.
This was actually one of the things that was discussed, by the way, was because you discussed this before. Go ahead, John. Sorry. Go ahead.
Studies have shown that witnesses seeing the same event don't all see it the same. So, if we have a concrete description of what actually happened, apparently some people's senses that they trust fully are wrong. So, just starting from that basis, senses are a probability statement. They're not a definite, representation of reality. And somebody might say like, well, okay, how about relationship OCD? You know if you love someone or not, and you can trust your senses. But I would say that most people on their wedding day feel like this is going to last forever, and they feel sure. It's a really great feeling. And in America, 40 to 50% of them are getting divorced. So I guess they were wrong. So I guess if you're divorced in a year, your senses told you the wrong thing. If you're together for 50 years, well, it seemed like you made a good guess. 7 years of a great marriage followed by 3 years of hell and then a divorce. I don't know what you call it, but on your wedding day, you didn't have the actual answer. You had data that was making a guess. It's like, I feel like I love this person. It seems good. I'm going with it. It's a probability statement. It's not that. I'm fond of bringing up two other things. Somebody might say it's ridiculous to worry about airplane parts falling out of the sky. Maybe not now with what's happening, but prior to the failure of having air traffic controllers, it seems like something that one should know is not going to happen. Yet when my son was 10, there was a small aircraft that crashed into a helicopter over a schoolyard during recess. Children died. You can look this up. It took place in Marion, Pennsylvania. Not many children died, but come on, how many children have to die for it to be a tragedy?
Yeah.
And that's a super low
won't go
probability event, right? 3 things that are unlikely have to happen, and they did. So I should know that's never going to happen. I should know that my children are safe. But I say children survive by luck. Most of the time they don't get hit by a car, get hit, die of a dread disease, fall down the stairs, crack their head, or get kidnapped. But sometimes it happens. I have to live in a world where that might happen. I should be certain that because everything's okay right now, it's never going to happen. If I'm worried about it, I'm worried about some future possible fantasy. I can't argue with that. It doesn't appear to be happening now, but I don't want it to happen. And
now is not the future.
Now it's not the future. But on the other hand, there are safety precautions everybody thinks are reasonable. So, why should I lock my door? I live in a pretty safe neighborhood. So why should I lock my door? I'm not living in a neighborhood where there's a lot of crime. But we consider that reasonable. So, the issue is when is what I'm doing not reasonable? And my other current favorite one, which I think I mentioned that show, was, 3 years ago when I was eating dinner with my son, daughter-in-law, and wife. Grandkid was in bed, and apparently I flop over the table and was making noise like I was stroking out or something. And when I wake up, they're all worried about me. What's happening? And I go like, something wrong, guys? I didn't feel like opening my eyes. And they finally figure out I'm awake, and my wife snaps out. She tests my cognitive functioning. What do you do for a living? I'm a hot shit OCD therapist. Anyway, the EMTs come, because I did feel like throwing up, and it felt a little funny. Rushed me to the hospital. I'm there for 2 days. They do gazillion tests. My son comes in to reveal, hey, Dad, just so you know, I did mouth to mouth on you while you were out. Like, okay, and at the end,
funny.
And so, right, I've had every heart test, brain test, I did, and at the end of that, they diagnosed atypical syncope, which meant, and I understood this, syncope meant you fainted. Atypical, hey, that looking like you were dying shit, that's weird. But here's the thing. So we don't know why it occurred, but since all the tests are normal, we don't think it'll happen again. Should I know? And although I wasn't worried about dying, does it mean that it would have been wrong for me to worry because I thought everything was okay and apparently, boom, it wasn't? And should I then be comfortable? But I asked them a question I thought they could answer, because I didn't have to answer like, well, what if it does happen again? It's like, well, yeah, you're in trouble then because something's wrong. I don't know what it is. But I thought I asked a question they could answer, which was, my son doing mouth to mouth. Is your guess, I wasn't looking for certainty because that wouldn't be like me. Is your guess that that was necessary or not? We don't know. So, okay, we don't know why this happened. Maybe your son saved your life, but don't worry about it because it probably won't happen. Oh, and by the way, even though you're perfectly healthy, could you see a cardiologist every 6 months? Which, by the way, I've done for the last 3 years. And guess what happens every time I go?
You're fine.
Nothing's wrong. It's not like, oh, we have this problem we're monitoring. It's like, yep, still nothing's wrong. So would I be wrong to worry about it? I mean, I'm not worried about it. I did better than my family. I can talk about it. And they're like, yeah, shut up, Dad. We don't want to talk about it. They were a little traumatized. But the point is.
I want to know what the psych results were, though. You didn't share those.
The psych results?
Yeah, what were the psych results?
I don't know, but I took the MMPI in graduate school, and it was pseudoneurotic schizophrenic with an obsessive compulsive reaction. For real.
Got it.
One of the older grad students came over and looked at my head, and he said, whoa, you really got one there. Who's that? Me. But I don't have OCD, so I don't know what it's talking about. Skits I could get.
All right, well, let me hold on.
So this idea of living, idea that you can be certain, and the thing that really rules people is wanting to be certain. For me to say, that's not going to happen. Well, no, you don't. A lot of things may be low probability, but they might happen. So I have to be comfortable. You don't want to be main paralyzed. It's figured in a car crash. There's no way to get in a car and say, this isn't happening today. You choose to live with that risk. Now, the ICBT people have an odd definition of uncertainty. So I don't know if that's an uncertainty or not, and is that an uncertainty I'm allowed to worry about or not? But the idea that your senses are going to tell you things, we know that the senses lie. I mean, how many people fall in love with somebody who's obviously bad for them?
Let me interject something,
one more.
Oh God, here we go.
Hey, you opened it up. Not my fault. Here's the last one. There are a ton of people who are sure that God is real and they believe in God. Now, we have multiple religions, so somebody is wrong. But they're all sure. So how do we deal with senses and sureness there? I can talk about belief, and you know what? I think certainty is not a fact, it's a feeling. So I feel certain about some things, but I'll acknowledge maybe I'm fooling myself, but it doesn't appear to. I feel sure I love my wife. Am I lying to myself? Well, we've been together more than 50 years. We're not fighting each other. So I'm going to let that feeling stay. If I'm wrong, I'll wait till I wake up. It's good enough.
Yeah. All right. May I?
Yeah, I've run to the end.
Okay, being one of the three of us who has actually now done a little bit of training in ICBT, let me just throw this out there. So the sense
through a 1 hour talk over the weekend. I just want to point that out.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, then maybe more. Zach's the expert here. All right. Anyways, so my understanding is that it's not just about the senses. There's also sort of this reasonable person standard, right? There's sort of different ways that we tend to make decisions about what we feel sure enough about to move on. And some of this is the sort of semantics of it, right? This sort of functional certainty versus real certainty. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but I do want to
but you already semantically agreed with me, because you say sure enough. All right. That's a definition of so
I do agree with you, Jon. And
yes, but but they're agreeing with me when they're saying that, but they don't like to say, or for some reason they don't like to say, we're coping with uncertainty. They want to say like somehow sure enough represents a definite
This trust.
reality.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm saying it's a likely reality, but
Right.
likely is not 100%. And if I demand 100%, that's it.
And I'm going to be very interested to see sort of what comes as the training progresses. But so far, what the early sort of part about this sort of the sort of conceptual piece of ICBT, it feels very much, Jon, like your gun test. That's what it feels very much like. Like we're making our decisions based on our best guess. And the difference though is that, and this, once again, I'm going to see what the rest of the training is that there's a big emphasis on just cognitive interventions. And I remain very confused about how we can really do this treatment without the behavioral component, without some behavioral component. There must be something that people are doing to really face their fears, or else I think it falls flat. But like I said, I'm early in my training, and so I'll be curious to see how they address this.
You bring up the other issue, the idea that this false idea, because people who don't do ERP as treatment talk about this dropout rate of people who can't handle ERP. I don't see it. You guys don't see it. People I know who treat OCD well don't see it. Now,
well, it's also not in the research. I mean, we have to look at the data on this, and dropouts. I mean, dropouts for ERP are incredibly low compared to any other intervention.
So as near as I can tell, and this is not research, but I'm not experiencing a data-wise or personal experience this incredible dropout rate. I do believe if you do ERP crappily, if I don't prepare people, if I have the wrong goals, yeah, I think people drop out. I mean, I see too many therapists when I supervise them, like on session 1, they're doing exposures, and it's like, do they even agree with the goal of treatment? Do they understand why treatment's going to work? Because, if I'm afraid I'm going to get, an illness from touching something, why is touching it going to help me? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, right. So, how poorly is treatment done? So against the straw man, yeah, ICBT is great. I mean, sometimes some of the descriptions they give ERP, well, I don't agree with their method, but it's like, if that's ERP, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not doing that.
Right.
But okay, that's poorly done ERP, which is frighteningly common. I mean, the only thing good about poor ERP is it's better than no ERP. So I'm hearing what
Zach,
you're saying.
do you have any comments on this before we move on to our next question?
Yeah, so like the takeaways I had was it's very much cognitive, and there was one example, paraphrasing, is what they're going for is like we're trying to get at when I think it's the obsessional doubt actually happens. So like in their view, it's like we're going at it way, way, way up here, whereas ERP and ACT and all these other things are happening more down here.
Further down the line. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay.
No, but and again, ERP with no cognitive components is stupid.
Right.
It doesn't really exist.
Well, but there are people who try to. There are people who try to do it that way.
Yes.
The issue is not the issue.
You can, but okay.
Well, that's why. That's why.
Yes,
it
there are.
I mean, the question is, how am I applying cognitive therapy? If I'm doing it to try to convince them of some, that their doubts aren't reasonable, no. If I'm using, if I'm identifying the core problem as intolerance, uncertainty, how are they going to live with it? Well, that's a different goal. So, to hear somebody's getting, CBT for therapy for OCD, I've got no idea what's happening. Drugs are nice. I know what dose, how much. CBT, it's like they can be getting relaxation. It's like, great, that's CBT, but it's the wrong. So I think ACT, and now ACT, I think adds a lot to ERP, but again, I have to adapt ACT for OC patients as to try to make all OCD patients fit a version of ACT that wasn't for OCD. but that's
Right.
just a proper application of the technique, and it adds a lot, you know. So
Well,
I think
one point I could summarize or do a little blending of all of this is some of the things you're talking about, I think are nuanced. And unless you've, I think, either had pretty good training or had training and then done a lot of ERP sessions, like hundreds and thousands, like probably all of us, you're not going to know those subtle nuances of what we're talking about. But those subtle nuances are really what can make or break the ERP treatment, I think, and somebody
I
get
mean, the
better.
caricature of ERP, which unfortunately exists as we just do this exposure and nothing else. Yeah, I agree with them. That is wrong, but that doesn't make. But I find what they're doing is lacking. You know, for the reasons for the reasons I said, for some of the semantic reasons, which is like, you know, like real. I mean, bottom line is, sorry. If you would just say low probability, we want to get you to be comfortable with low probability. I can't argue with that as a goal. That is the goal.
Yeah.
You know, and obsessional doubt. You know, creativity is doubt. You know, the core creativity is what if. So, you know, it has a really useful function, but you know, when do I, you know, the gun test never gives certainty, you know, which people have to explain. It's not like, oh, this is what I guess with the gun, so I know. It's like, that's as good as it gets.
Right.
That's your guess. That's as good as it gets. You're going to die in a car crash today? No. That's a good guess. Yeah, I hope not. But, you know, but are you willing to?
I love talking about that after I just drove 3.5 hours this morning.
Yeah, you know, but, you know, again, are you willing to bet your wife's life that you won't get in a car crash today?
I guess so.
Now, you know, if you're forced to, you know, but if you would just bet at random, like, hey, here's the deal, like, you know, we're going to give you $20 million. You know, what are you going to bet? You know, you want to make this bet? You can have $20 million, or we kill your wife. You know, so which way you want to bet? You're going to be in a car crash or not? We know what the safe bet is, but if you're just going to do it but if you have the choice of not betting, yeah, I'm not taking that bet. Why? Odds are so great that you're going to be okay. You're going to be rich, but oh yeah, well, I don't want to play that game.
Mm-hmm.
That's like OCD. I don't want to play that game, except we're trying to convince them. You know, the thing is, for you, you don't have any pressure of what would be the advantage of taking this bet where your wife's life is on the line. With OCD, I have a lot of other crap happening. So the question of why would I take this risk? You guys don't have a reason to take that risk. But if I have OCD, I have a lot of reasons, because part of my bet is already failing, because whatever I'm afraid of might happen anyway. So I do all this stuff and I don't get the prize.
Yeah.
But I think,
really
you know,
sad.
John, I want to mention this, that I think that there are certain circumstances that maybe a lot of people can relate to, in which, like, we are taking risks that are scary to us, but that, that we have a lot of reasons to do so. And like, one example I always come to is like new mothers, right? Or new parents, right? We might have a tendency to go check on our baby to sort of feel certain they're still breathing, right? We're like there with the baby monitor. Now we have video baby monitors, right? So we can, like, but what if we see them and they're still, and you know, and our son, because I was a little crazy myself, we actually had this little pad
You have
that
anxiety? No way.
would alarm, stop, Zach. Would
Sorry.
alarm if he stopped moving for longer than a few seconds.
God, that's
And the
terrible. That's fucking torture. Pardon my language. Sorry.
problem is that technology is not foolproof, right?
Right?
So every once in a while, the alarm would flare. But the point being, okay, despite all of these sort of checking devices that we have, and me peeking in and going and standing over, right, all of this stuff, eventually I would be so exhausted that I couldn't do it and I had to sleep, right? And I felt like
and then the kid could die.
Right. And so I like, and it was like, I'm just so exhausted. I have to go and sleep. I can't
We
do it
have to risk our
anymore.
children dying.
Yep.
There it is.
We,
Right.
you know, my son did two things the day we brought him home from the hospital. The first one, we had to call the hospital right away. We get home, and in the little stump of the belly button is a
Yeah.
bunch of lint sticking out, like a big clot of lint stuck in there. Like, what do we do? Like, there's lint there. Like, is that going to get infected? Like, what do we do? We don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody said what to do about lint, so we called the hospital. It's like
Not in the manual.
yeah, like what do we do? Do we pull it out? Like what? And they said just leave it; it'll fall out eventually. And the other thing he did was, and I think I always forget, babies are supposed to leap on their belly or their backs now. Which one?
Back.
Back. Okay.
Is best.
Right. But you know what? When Josh was little, and this is frightening, they were supposed to be on their belly to prevent SIDS.
Oh my
I know.
gosh, that's so
Yeah,
funny.
but his first day he flipped on his own on his back. So it's like, oh my God, he flipped. Like, now what do we do? So we did spend the first hour and a half watching to make sure he wouldn't flip over on his back again, which he didn't do until like whatever appropriate age they can do that. So we risked him, flipping over and dying. But little did we know it would have been good if he could flip on his back, because he was more likely to die for the way the rules were back then. Which, how do you like that for a set of
That
rules?
is such a good analogy to use with people, because I have a 6-month-old. She just started flipping over on her stomach, and at the 6-month checkup, they're like, "Yeah, it's okay. She could be able to support that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay," because otherwise, back is best.
Yeah,
And it used to be the other way.
Yeah,
I know.
And they were sure. They were
Right?
sure.
They were
They
sure.
were sure. That's right. All right.
Well,
Now, so
Lewis.
Lewis's question.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Lewis's question, I think, is best for us to address at the very end, and you'll know why. Because I think
we
it's
only
a
have
sort of
14 minutes.
Yeah.
I recognize that.
I'm
but,
pretty wordy,
okay.
and Zach is a good follower, so I don't know what makes you think there'll be time.
I wanted to address this question. Hold on. Okay. How should someone with disgust OCD manage their treatment? And I just, if you guys will allow me just for a second. What was that, Zach?
There's some dude that I've heard on podcasts
talking about this. That was exactly the person that was cited.
He seems to have it down.
Oh my goodness. Allison Stimson is popping in between her cases.
Hi, Alex.
So nice to have you.
Yay!
So exciting.
Are you going to answer this question, Katie? You wanted to answer. Come on.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I got distracted for a second there by Allison being on our chat. So, I think this is a really interesting question. So when we look at, and I am gonna say this, right? When we look at the inhibitory learning and optimizing exposure research that's been, really talked about, one of the things, if you talk to the people that are actually doing this research, that they would say is that in order for this theory to sort of effectively be applied, we are looking for concrete outcomes, objective outcomes. And so it works very, very well if somebody predicts, for example, that they're going to vomit tonight if they don't do X, right? Or if somebody predicts that people around them are going to respond in a particular way immediately, right? Because then we can sort of gauge reactions and we have ways to kind of measure, right? Evidence to measure. So, and the part of the problem, according to the folks that are actually doing this inhibitory learning, optimizing exposure research, the problem with disgust is that it's really hard to measure. It's a very subjective thing. And like all of the sort of more subjective stuff, the best way to approach it is really just from a habituation standpoint, as opposed to the actual learning, the inhibitory learning theory standpoint.
That was a long way to say that.
What's the short way to say it, Jon?
What's the short way to say it? Well, with disgust, the key trick in treatment that treatment depends on, and I don't generally go to ACT jargon. So I use ACT, I just don't label it as ACT. So I'm not putting down ACT at all because I use it. But just, I'm going to the whole thing depends on willingness. The person with a disgust issue, they feel disgust, there's no doubt, but they're also kind of like, I'm not willing to put up with this. It can't be there at all. And, and so the question is, are you willing to go through the suffering to be able to get used to it so it doesn't affect you? Which brings us then, if I can convince you that here's the ultimate outcome, and it is going to suck to get there. It's literally going to be disgusting. But, at the end of the day, it won't control you. So the first trick is helping you, like, what is the benefit? Why are you willing to do this? Once you're willing to do it, we gradually, do these disgusting things and get used to it. I mean, we can put up with a lot of things, and there is a lot of habituation to discuss, but there's that cognitive piece of, I'm going to put up with it. Maybe you'll even throw up. Okay, that sucks. But that just means we'll slow exposure down and do it a little more gradually. But, so the idea that I can't be, I don't want to be in that state, well, that's going to, that determines treatment success or failure. And so partially it's going to be determined how well have we worked together to understanding, like, here's what we're going to do. And I want to teach you to live in gross world, because depending on what disgusts you, it may be inescapable. If it's, vomit's not real common. So if you want to avoid vomit, you can certainly find a lot of places you think vomit might be. So it's going to be a little more pervasive for you than for the rest of us in the way it seems, but it's kind of avoidable. But I might find something else disgusting that everybody else is comfortable with. I would never say to that person, well, you're wrong. Nobody else finds this disgusting. What's wrong with you?
Right.
But that's my standard. The thing is, like, yeah, let's help you live with X.
Yeah. And so we're learning to tolerate, right? We're learning to tolerate the disgust over time.
Yeah.
And
we're being willing to do it.
Willing to do it. Yeah.
We've given them reason.
Yeah. And I just want to remind everybody who if somebody hasn't hear me say this, why am I having a hard time talking before?
I don't know.
At the recent IOCDF
What kind of
conference,
relationship did you have with your mom?
Oh, for Pete's sake. My mom might be watching. So Jon, don't say anything about my mom. That's very rude.
Wasn't. I only brought it up because you said you're having this trouble and wanted to know why.
All right. Anyways, at our most recent IOCDF conference, I had a wonderful opportunity to do the road to recovery and a few other experiences with Jon. And, in order to sort of tackle this disgust thing, there are ways that we go sort of directly at it. And so one of the things that Jon had everybody doing was chewing ABC gum, which, if other people haven't heard of this, I hadn't before the conference, but now I know it means already been chewed gum. And that was really disgusting. And I have to say, looking around the room that day, Jon, there were a lot of people that were like they were having this little.
And do you remember? Two things. One is, of course, I made nobody do it.
No, nobody was forced.
But do you remember my explanation of why it's normal?
Yes, I absolutely do. The reason why it's normal is because if you've ever had an experience, like, for example, going to college or even having high school romance, French kissing is something that people do quite readily, and they don't go to their therapist and say, I want to, never do French kissing again. The reasonable person standard is that we should be kind of okay with French kissing somebody at some point.
You could say a better
Not
way.
everybody.
You swap spit with so-and-so.
Thank you.
I like that one better.
Well, Jon said French
kissing. I said swap spit. Yeah, but I said you're swapping spit.
Better,
yeah,
it's
you're
fun.
getting the same spit you are. No, I did, but you're getting the same spit. Again, if I spit on a plate, you don't want to lick it, but you don't mind getting it fresh from somebody else's mouth. So the idea, but that points out that what seems disgusting, there's this idea, but the actual substance is kind of the same substance. It's just like, it's cool if it's with sex. It's not cool just licking it off a plate or 10-hour-old gum. But, so the goal is danger-wise, while you're willing to do it for sex. So let's do it to get over OCD. And, so disgust is mental in that way.
Yeah.
I always like to say in terms of that, just because it's disgusting, that and I think you discovered this, that 10-hour-old gum is as gooey
Yeah.
as if you just took it out of your mouth.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. And it really is disgusting. Yeah. I remember sitting there thinking, really, I'm doing this. But you know what I heard people saying that day? Because I was listening and I was paying attention. When we're putting our arms in the dumpster and chewing the already been chewed gum, so many people I heard them saying, my OCD stuff is like going to be nothing for a while compared to what I'm doing right now. This is so much worse. And so it's sort of like this relative, right, thing that
It's
after
like
these
walking on hot
experiences,
coals. After I walk on hot
they're
coals,
like,
why am I
not
afraid of
washing my
anything?
hands, right? Not washing my
Yeah.
hands is easy. I just ate a Tic Tac off a toilet seat, right? I remember hearing somebody saying that, and I was like, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
I did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was good.
It's
Anyways,
almost like
okay, we
it
have
had
just
some sort of treatment points to it or something.
That's right. There were treatment principles involved.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Lewis asked us to do is that because it's OCD Awareness Week, just take a minute here and maybe share. And we might not have time for all of us to, but
Yeah,
Zach,
because
you
you
can
wouldn't give us
start.
enough time.
Sorry, well, John, I can never predict how
Go
lengthy
on, go
your
on, go on.
answers are going to be.
Oh, no, I'm
Zach,
predictable
so
in that.
I'm going to start with you, Zach. So
Sweet.
he suggested
Yeah.
that just choosing something that we want to say about OCD to sort of spread awareness out there. And I thought we could do this in sort of a soundbite kind of way, so hopefully not too lengthy. John, I'm talking to you, but Zach, you go first.
I want to talk about how much progress we've made over the years and decades. And don't stop. Keep going. I was just at a mini conference in Minnesota over the weekend, and in a room of 40 people, 5 people shared their more or less POCD stories.
Wow. That's
One person doing it, but 5?
yeah,
Like
it's awesome.
I was telling my employees today, because we had a team meeting here, like 10, even 5 years ago, I don't know if I would have seen that happen. And in the climate we have going on, the Epstein files, and
Right,
anybody who does X, Y, and Z is a bad person. Oh, they must be a pedophile. Like, that's
right,
unheard of. So the fact that you can have people have the bravery, one, to do it, and two, that we know enough that we can then share those things, that's awesome.
right,
Don't
right.
stop, keep going. There, that's it.
Absolutely. Great perspective, Zach. John, do you want to say something? Little soundbite here for OCD Awareness Week.
Zach reminds me, the very first OCD conference that was national was in Minnesota. And I gave a talk on relapse prevention back then. And the common thing people kept saying to me after that talk is, how do we get good enough so we have to worry about relapse? And today it's like, oh, we can talk about relapse prevention because so many people do well. And I think but the thing I'd really like to say, and it will be short, is, a lot of people feel bad having OCD. I mean, they feel like something's defective about them, and it's not. And the most important thing is that when you overcome your OCD, you will not be normal. You will be better than normal, because the average person doesn't really cope with uncertainty that well. The people who overcome OCD do so much better than pretty much most of the people. So we're just going to help you have your superpower.
Yeah. And what I would say, my soundbite would be, there is help out there. And so, reach out, ask for help. IOCDF is such an incredible organization that has so many resources. And even for people who are living in an area that they might not have access to mental health professionals, there is support out there. Go to the IOCDF website. There is support. We have programs like ours, but there are many wonderful programs out there where you can ask questions, get support. There are also wonderful self-help books out there. John's book is such a wonderful example of that.
Thank you.
That you can really, start your treatment on your own. Even if you don't have access to a mental health professional, you can start that treatment on your own. So that's what I would say. There is hope. And so don't lose hope. And this is a very treatable condition. So hang in there. All right, guys. let's sign off. And take care,
Thank you,
everybody.
Katy.
Happy OCD Awareness Week.